This is a reading from New York City from the inside, and we're all inside right now. I don't know if it's 92 degrees in New York City or not, but it is in Detroit. And it's over 100 with the, when you factor in the humidity. But anyway, George Wallace put together this really great book, anthology with many, many great poets in it. And we want to do different readings around. I think I'm participating in one on June 29th, as I recall. And hopefully I'll be able to get into the room at that point. But George is a well-known writer. He goes all around the country and the world. He's a guy that connected me in England years ago and other places. I've been out to Long Island, which I'd never been to before until George invited me out there. To Walt Whitman's place. I'd never been in Long Island. It was interesting. I liked it. So George is the editor of this book. George, can you just tell everybody how, why, where you did this book?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Well, some of you know Edward, John, Jeff Wright, yourself, Francine, of course, because she's been helping with a number of she's in the anthology and also been helping with producing a lot of the events here in New York and on Zoom. All know this story, which is basically that I've been working with a press in San Francisco, Blue Light Press, boutique press, very nice organization, operation run by Diane Frank. And she's been publishing chapbooks and occasional anthologies and to sponsoring, putting on events in the Bay Area. She's done 2 of my books. And she did, in a year or 2 ago, she did an anthology called Fog and Light, an anthology of poetry of San Francisco poets, which, as you can imagine, anybody who knows about the Bay Area, you know, in the tradition of poetry and literature in the Bay Area, especially beat literature and street literature, you know, bohemian literature, it has an extensive history and extensive collection. Well, she put together this very nice collection, asked me to be in it because I had lived in San Francisco a couple of times, and so I was kind of an honorary Californian. Then it did pretty well. So then she said to me, you know, I'd like to do a New York City one. Would you do it for me? Would you edit it? So I jumped on it. Of course, you know, her book is 150 pages, 175 pages in San Francisco. For me, I felt like, you know, this book had to be at least 300 pages, but it could go to 1,000 pages, but that would be pointless because you certainly couldn't get comprehensive with it. And you could try to boil it down to 150 pages, but that would be inadequate. It would be like, you know, John Foster Dulles leaving out Korea, you know. So, I mean, that was really the issue, was to make it the right size. So I worked on it for a year and a half. I knew Edward's work, you know, and I think Jeff may have introduced me to Edward, how to contact him, but I knew his work, you know, from over the years. John Sinclair, you know, I done some work together in Lowell, Massachusetts, and other locations. And Jeff, of course, you know, is on the scene in New York City. You know, so it was a question of, you know, of pulling together a sufficient breadth and depth of writers. I should have had Joe Rorty in there for that matter, who's with us today. You know, but you know, I had to cut it off at some point. So I did cut it off, and that's what I did. Worked on it for a year and a half or so. An incredible process, a challenging process, much more than I thought it would be, but very rewarding. It came out in March. We had a big party for it out in AWP. It's got a lot of press. It's been a bunch of bookstores around the country, independent bookstores. It's been on Amazon.com bestseller list for 4 months running, continually, March, April, May, June. So it's still on the Amazon.com bestseller list. We're telling people buy it from an independent bookstore because, you know, it's being handled by that company that distributes, you know, nationwide to bookstores. So we're recommending that people that are interested in the book can get the book by going to an independent bookstore and asking for it there, because it's readily available that way. And since March, when we did our first thing in Philadelphia with AWP, we've had maybe a dozen readings, Zoom or live. Just finished one with Zooming to San Francisco last Saturday night or Sunday night, I think it was. There was a group in Dallas that read from it without even having anybody from it, but they just wanted to honor the book. And the beauty of this book is that there is an interconnectedness between people, not even just in the United States, but internationally with New York and New York literary phenomenon. It's one of the vortices, it's a vortex of poetry for America. So people feel an attachment and association with it, even if they're not New Yorkers. They've come here, they've been here, they admire something about it, whether it's Walt Whitman or Frank O'Hara or Juna Barnes or Langston Hughes or the Harlem Renaissance. There's all this intersectionality with New York that makes this anthology a very special thing. So I'm very proud to have been able to put it together for people and be able to celebrate it over the summer. And in particular, this is a really good reading. The fact that ML's put this together, because we've got some very hip musical type people that have a different cut of the deck. So we're going to see a very interesting cut of the deck with this particular reading. I welcome John Roche, who's formerly from upstate New York, now living down in New Mexico. So, and then all of you out there in Facebook land that are watching right now, thank you for joining us. And I'll turn it back over to ML.
Thanks, George. I'm going to start with Edward Fields in New York City. And I'll ask everybody who's reading here, that you can certainly read another poem or two in addition to the piece that's in the book. If I can, I'm going to try, but I don't know if it's going to work on this. I'm trying to hold the book up now, but it's not working. So there it is. Perfect. So Edward Fields has a number of poetry books out. For a long time, he was with Black Sparrow with a lot of other great writers. And he's in this book, and I was really pleased to see that he's in there and that he's, thriving with his poetry, and it's happening because we've all been out of circulation for 2.5 years now. So please welcome Edward Field. You might have to unmute if you're muted, Edward. I'm unmuting
now. Am I
okay.
here?
Yep.
I'm here. Thank you. The poem in the George Wallace took was from my first book, and it was written in the 1950s when this country was in terrible state with the House Un-American Activities Committee and Senator McCarthy. And I called it the Statue of Liberty because I was working in an office overlooking the harbor, and there I saw the Statue of Liberty every day. And I thought, I used to see the ships going off to Europe. All my friends were in Europe. Everybody got out who could. It was such a terrible time. And they weren't just looking for communists. They were ruining a lot of people's reputations and livelihoods, but they were also getting rid of gay people. They really have never talked about that, but gay people were being fired everywhere as un-American. I mean, it was a really terrible time. And people don't, I'm old enough to remember it. I'm 96, so I'm 98. I'm making myself younger. So I'll read the poem, The Statue of Liberty, that I used to see from my office. All the ships are sailing away without me. Day after day, I hear their horns announcing to the wage earners at their desks that it is too late to get aboard. They steam out of the harbor with the statue of a French woman waving them goodbye, who used to be excellent to welcome people with, but is better lately for departures. The French gave her to us as a reminder of their slogan and our creed, which hasn't done much good because we have turned a perfectly good wilderness into a place nice to visit, but not to live in. Forever a prisoner in the harbor on her star-shaped island of gray stones, she has turned moldy looking and shapeless, and her bronze drapery stands oddly into the wind. From this prison-like island, I watch the ships sailing away without me, disappearing one by one, day after day, into the un-American distance. And in my belly is one sentence: set freedom free, as the years fasten me into place and attitude, hand upraised and face into the wind that no longer brings tears to my eyes. So, George, that was a very good choice, I think. But what you said about everybody, when I was on tour around the country, I used to just go all over the place giving readings. And everybody used to say, how can you live there? When they heard I was from New York. How can you live there? And so I did write a poem telling people why I live in New York. It was in one of my books, I can't remember which. I live in a beautiful place, a city claimed to be astonished when you say you live there. They talk of junkies, muggings, dirt, and noise, missing the point completely. I tell them where they live is hell, a land of frozen people. They never think of people. Home, I am astonished by this environment that is also a form of nature, like those paradises of trees and grass. But this is a people paradise, where we are the creatures mostly, though thank God for dogs, cats, sparrows, and roaches. This vertical place is no more an accident than the Himalayas are. The city needs all those tall buildings to contain the tremendous energy here. The landscape is in a state of balance. We do God's will whether we know it or not. Where I live, the streets end in a river of sunlight. Nowhere else in the country do people show just what they feel. We don't put on any act. Look at the way New Yorkers walk down the street. It says, I don't care. What nerve to dare to live their dreams or nightmares. And no one bothers to look. True, you have to be an expert to live here. Part of the trick is not to go anywhere. Lounge about, go slowly in the midst of the rush for novelty. Anyway, beside the eats, the big event here is the streets, which are full of love. We hug and kiss a lot. You can't say that for anywhere else around. For some, it's a carnival of sex. There's all the opportunity in the world. For me, it is no different. Out walking, my soul seeks its food. It knows what it wants. Instantly, it recognizes its mate. Our eyes meet and our beings exchange a vital energy. The universe goes on charge and we pass by without holding. Thank you. And thank you, George, for putting me in the anthology. It's great.
Thanks, Edward. That's great. I want to have you, it's been years since you've been in Detroit. And it's been years since any of us have done anything live for the most part. But I do want to have you back again. So don't go too far.
Okay.
And I meant to mention that Edward Field, not only as an activist, but was a World War II bombardier. I think you were shot down, weren't you?
Yes, and there's a film about it. I have a movie making niece who made a film about my plane crash.
Wow.
We were on a mission over Berlin and got shot up badly and couldn't get back to the base in England and crashed in the North Sea. So it's and it's available. The little film, it's a 10-minute short.
Oh, okay.
I wrote a poem about it, so I narrate the poem over the video, the images, and it's called A Minor Accident of War, and it's available on Vimeo, free.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna definitely check that out when this is over.
A Minor Accident of War.
Okay, great. That's really cool. I want to come to Detroit now. My man is in Detroit, John Sinclair. John Sinclair is internationally known. He's done a number of books, from We Just Changed the Beat to his blues anthology of poems, his own poetry, his Thelonious, A Book of Monk. And we're just happy that he is part of our scene here in Detroit and has been for many, many years. So I don't know if I have to unmute you, John, or you can. Let's see if I can. All right. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Please welcome John Sinclair.
Okay. You got me?
You're good.
Okay. I want to thank George Wallace for asking me to be in this book. I've never lived in New York, but I've spent quite a bit of time there. Mentally, I am there most of the time. This is a poem written after the Thelonious Monk brilliant composition called Round About Midnight, dedicated to my friend Libby Jones. Ready? There is a point between night and day where it all comes clear and bright. A new beginning where yesterday can be left behind, and a new day is there to greet us, clean with promise and a clear path through the hours before dawn, when the mind kicks in. The square is all tucked in bed, and the people of the night in charge of the scene. Players, musicians, whores, countermen at diners, and cats delivering the morning papers, garbage men and cops and drunks in the rhythms of midnight and the small hours after. A different sphere completely from daytime traffic and the peculiar world of comments. This is when the music is made in nightclubs until 2 or 4 a.m. and then in after hours joints in people's cribs or in the recording studios after the gig with everyone nice and relaxed, half juiced or easy, lazy, a little crazy maybe, but ready to put down some tunes onto recording discs or tape for the rest of the world to hear around midnight and after. The end of a day Or in the metaphorical mode, it's the last sigh of an era. Like around 1939 to 44 with the war going on abroad and the nation finally tearing itself loose from the last dying grip of free modern America. All its young men at war, and only the misfits, the rejects, and draft dodgers left to shape some new form from the ruins of the past. Some measure their alienation from the day before, their allegiance to the flag of tomorrow, like whatever it might bring will be better than what's happening right now. The high discovery of risk, or the existential premise that something new and brilliant can be made from the existing materials. The intention to create and invent on little jobs that monks spoke of in 1948 with no reward, but the beauty of the thing itself. The challenge of invention with no idea of what might come next. No pattern to fall back on. Nothing but the driving force inside yourself in the long roots of culture stretching back to West Africa and the southern United States. The utter and absolute beauty of making a bridge across the years to link the past in a whole new way with what's happening right now. Monk at the piano, composing the future, and Bud Powell taking the piece to Cootie Williams to record 1944, a standard of modern music, even before its composer could record it. The loveliest work in modern jazz at just over 3 minutes. Yet longer than tomorrow, longer than the 45 years since Monk beats that artist had his gargantuan art gave it to us as a sign that something was coming that had never been here before. Around midnight.
Wow. Woo! I haven't heard the Monk poems in a while, like 2.5 years or so. Wow. You want to favor us with another one, John? You got one handy?
I hadn't even thought about doing another one. That was so big.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's cool. George,
Give you my favorite little poem. I can do that.
Okay, go ahead.
Jazz, but spirituals. Played through saxophones and trombones. Spirit voices through metal tubings and the terrible repetition of the formal premise is trance-like at its best or boring when the spirit. Well, what is blues but spirituals with a line removed? That is structurally. And in content, just a prayer to the gods of daily life to ask the blessing that the body of another may lay warm in bed beside you at night, and the rent be paid, and a meal on the table with the sheriff far away from the scene of the crime. The motherfucking sheriff. Oh, what is jazz but the registration of the human personality in relation to the spiritual, stripped of literal meaning, but full of sound and portent, direct as the voice of the times. Spiritual.
Yeah. Woo! Beautiful, John. Beautiful. I hope you got air conditioning up there on the 3rd floor.
No, I got a fan going on.
All right. I'm
out of
gonna
the
read.
engines of hell.
Hey, Jeff, since you're here and you're in the book too, would you want to favor us with yours, or do you want me to read a poem and come back to you? Yeah. Oh, I have to ask you to unmute. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, sure. I'd love to. You go ahead, and then I'll come back to me.
Okay. All right. I'm going to read a poem. John Sinclair is very, very familiar with Farouk Zibay. And Farouk and I had done a lot of stuff in New York City over the years. I think after he was on oxygen, it was harder to travel there, but he would come with me. And we did Cornelia Street, we did Holman's place, the Bowery Poetry Center, and other places around town. So when George asked me, I thought, Farouk Zibay is as much New York as anybody. He also worked a lot with blood. So in fact, when we'd go there, usually Farouk would spend a little bit of time with Blood, James Blood. So this is a poem for him. It's an old poem. It's called The Jazz. The touch is soft and meaningful and fast like jazz, uptown in sweat, in tears, and hard driving notes that break our opportunities. Hi, the jazz, the jazz. Can you dig what's happening here? Can you dig what's happening here? It's the blowing future barking us back to the dog houses of our present lamp. And the jazz, it beats and polishes everything, every damn thing. Let it talk soft and slow. Let us say no words and just listen to the jazz, to the jazz, to the jazz.
Yes.
Yeah. Farouk Zibay. And George, you're in here too, right? So I'm going to come to you after Jeffrey. Let me tell
All right.
folks.
Also, let's get Francine in because she's here and she's in the book as well.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Let me just tell folks, Jeffrey, for some reason, Jeffrey, you fly through Detroit at the airport, I hear on occasion.
I was lucky.
And Barry told me that. And we've met before. You were at a reading we did, I think, at the Bowery.
Yeah, at the club.
And bless you for that. So Jeffery Cyphers Wright is a poet surrealist, new romantic poet. I just see someone's in the room there. Author of 17 books of verse, including Blue Lyre, Fake Lies, and Party Everywhere. Currently, he publishes, and this is really a great magazine, Live Mag, a journal of art and poetry. And he's given readings all over St. Mark's and the New York Public Library's Tompkins Square. Has an MFA in poetry after studying with Allen Ginsberg. Must have been in Brooklyn, then I take it, at Brooklyn College. So please welcome. I'm glad you're here, Jeff. It's been a while since we've talked. Jeffery Cyphers Wright.
Thank you, ML. Can you hear me? Yeah, great. Okay. It's great to be here with this crew. I've always wanted to hear John, and I love Ed's stuff. I haven't seen you for a while, Ed. You look so fucking great. It's amazing. Yeah, baby. I had Ed in Live Mag. George has been in Live Mag. Check it out, livemag.org. And this poem that I'm going to read from the anthology is one of my sonnets. I usually write sonnets because I like to get in and out and know when I'm done, you know. And it's called Come On Now. Evening stoops under its sodden shawl. A siren broods its caterwaul, snarling over blackened roofs. Someone's on the run. Wet tires whisper to Avenue C. I am lost without you, they swear. I used to be a matador in Manhattan, dancing with horns. I wanted to be a genie, smoking in your coat of arms. While you gave the raindrops names, I made up a little song called You'll Never Be Happier Than When I Was a String on Your Harp. Thank you.
Jeffery Cyphers Wright, and remember Live Mag. Look that up. It's out there. You're right. You got a website and all that, and you do a bunch of cool readings in New York City too. I get the messages and appreciate that. George says that we are lucky to have Francine out there. And so let me introduce Francine. She's a part of this collection. Man, everybody's in this book. I'm just looking at Cornelius Eady was going to join us tonight. He probably gave up on that. So we might hear from him. He's been on our airwaves before. Let's see. Francine, let me just I saw you in here, didn't I? Oh, there you are. Francine Witt, is that right? Oh, you have to unmute.
Yes, that's right.
All right, let me tell folks who you are, okay? So they know. And I also mentioned this. You can get this book here if you're in and around the Detroit area or anywhere at BookBeat, which is in Oak Park here. It's our premier indie independent bookstore. But Carrie also specializes in the underground of all periods, and you'll find some really interesting work there. The BookBeat, look that up, and you can order from them and have it shipped anywhere. Francine Witt is a native New Yorker who has seen many iterations of the beautiful city, the fun teeny bopper pseudo hippie 60s, the gritty 70s where she tempted her way around Manhattan, to now a city that just won't take it lying down, much less lie down in the first place. She is a former NYC public school teacher, lives on the Upper East Side, writes where she writes poetry and flash fiction. Her books include Dressed All Wrong for This on the Blue Light Press, which is the publisher of this, The Way of the Wind, Ad Hoc Press, and Cafe Crazy Kelsey Books. Isn't that in Ann Arbor?
Yeah.
No, wrong Kelsey. Kelsey actually lives over on Hancock and Second. No, I'm just kidding. Please welcome Francine Witt.
Thank you. Very nice to be here. I still have a little bit of COVID voice. Forgive me. So my poem is called The Moon Takes the E Train. Stumbles drunk from a downtown dive, swirling himself milk into coffee, down the stairs and onto the train, and then forgets his way home. Gets off instead at 40 Deuce, looks around and remembers the old style scene, hookers and porn flicks, how in his fullness he would push some poor sucker into Mr. Nasty's peep show, watch him skulk out later, face wiped off, slither home to bridge and tunnel, lighter $20. But then the whole place went carnival, wax museums and kiddie theater, life-sized Elmo and Elsa, who will pose with you for a hefty tip. And he's looking around at all the lights blinking into the darkened dark. And that's when a couple approaches the moon and asks to take a selfie. How much it would mean, what with the moon being the thing that made them fall in love. And the moon has heard this all before, how he's pulled the tides and planted romance. But really, he has a long, long night ahead, trying to remember which subway will take him back to the sky. But instead, the moon takes a breath, looks at his reflection in the couple's eyes, nestles in between them, and smiles. Thank you so much.
Francine Witt. Am I saying it right? It's not witty, or is it?
Yes, no, you got it exactly right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Well, thanks for being out there. Appreciate it. George, do you want to finish us off with, you have an entry in here, I'm assuming.
Yes, I would like to read something. And,
Yeah, please.
But first say that, actually, this intersectionality thing. Actually, the first time I met you, Emma, I was in Cleveland. I believe we were doing the DA Levy Festival together. And so that's my first time hearing you and learning to appreciate what it is that you do. So, and yes, you did come out to the Wallace birthplace for us, which was a real pleasure. There's a lot of icons represented in this book, iconic objects or locations in New York City, which people relate to, and the whole, the whole more or less atmosphere, the atmospherics of New York City, in and of themselves have a cachet of their own. So that's something that I was trying to incorporate and include in this book. That's why I asked Edward for his poem about the Statue of Liberty, because I didn't want to not have a Statue of Liberty poem in there without overdoing it, because it's not, this is not a tourist's version of New York. But sometimes these, when you're talking about a person looking at the Statue of Liberty and steaming out of the harbor and leaving it, with the irony of looking at the Statue of Liberty in that way, that is something welcoming people to new opportunity, or waving goodbye, like good riddance, or goodbye, like get out of town when you can, was a very interesting phenomenon. And interestingly, and this is why I'm prefacing what I'm going to read, right after Field in the book, alphabetically, comes Karen Finneyfrock, Finneyfrock, who wrote a poem called The Newer Colossus. She's from Washington, but I first saw her do this poem at the Bowery Poetry Club, which you mentioned earlier. And she has a take on the Statue of Liberty from a different period in history, 1990s, 2000s, early 2000s, something like that. So this is her poem, The Newer Colossus. And this is a different kind of irony, because this is the Statue of Liberty, so embarrassed by standing over this thing with a poem around it by Emma Lazarus saying, "Give me your tide, you poor, your wretched refuse." When the climate, the political climate of a non-welcoming of people from other countries is so profoundly a part of the political debate and some of what we're going through now. So this is the Statue of Liberty speaking about being embarrassed to be, have a sign around her neck, basically saying welcome, when our country represents just the opposite. My feet have been wilting in this salt-crusted cement since the French sent me over on a steamer in pieces. I am the new Colossus, wonder of the modern world, a woman standing watch at the gate of power. The first night I stood here, looking out over the Atlantic like a marooned sailor, plaster fell from my lips parting, and I said, "Give me your tired, your poor," like a woman would say it, full of trembling mercy, while the rats ran over my sandals and up my stairwell. I was young then and hopeful. I didn't know how Europe and Asia, the Middle East would keep pushing their wretched through the bay like a high tide. I'm choking on the words I said about the huddled masses. They huddle on rafts leaving Cuba, and we turn them back. They huddle in sweltering truck backs crossing the desert, and we arrest them. I heard about a container ship where 3 Chinese hopefuls died from a lack of oxygen, pretending to be dish rags for our dollar stores. How can we not have room for them? We still have room for golf courses. I am America's first liar. Forget about George Washington. My hypocrisy makes me want to plant my dead face in the waves. The ocean reeks of fish and tourism. My optimist heart corrodes in the salt wind. Give me your merchandise, I should say. Give me your coffee beans. Give me your bananas, avocados. Give me your rice. We turn our farmland into strip malls. Give me the things to sell at my strip malls. Give me your ethnic cuisine, your cheaply made plastic. Give me by a trembling boatload your Japanese cars. Give me your oil, not so I can light my lamp with it, but to drool it from the thirsty lips of my lawnmowers. Give me your jealousy, your yearning to crawl inside my hollow bones and sleep in my skin made of copper. Look, over there is New York. Doesn't it glow like the cherry end of a cigarette? Like a nebula from the blackness of space out here in the harbor. Wait with me. Watch it pulse like a hungry lion until morning. I should tell you to enjoy it from here. You will never be allowed to come in. Karen 55. Washington.
Fantastic. So you didn't put one of your own in there, George?
Yeah, I
or you-
did, but I get to read it all the time, so I like to read somebody else's.
That's great. I'm glad you did that too. Eleni is in Greece, I think for the summer.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much to George for including me in this anthology, and thank you to ML for inviting me to read tonight. I'm really sorry I can't be there with you, but I'm going to read this poem. It's an excerpt from a poem called The Monster Lives of Boys and Girls, and it's from a book by that name that came out when I lived in New York. The Monster Lives of Boys and Girls. Omni hominem, omni humanim, omni anima, omni immortalis, omni rush to fill and rushing, omni manatee and mandible, omnibus. Tell me, am I the daughter of a city, or am I the daughter of a man? This urban wrapped rose, dog rose wrapped in particulate air, where flies an urban bumblebee and all, and the female sparrow, adept at aphid picking, comes to feed amidst delphinium on Avenue B. Ho! Sparrows knocking the petals off flowers, leaves off trees. Tell how to display the monster lives of boys and girls strutting in finery down Avenue A. As you know, I'm writing this for you and you only, mutant. All these little details I put in for you. This man sweating in blue stockings and red leotard suit, he's got it backwards. That grid of this world that shows the mute web of human endeavor, kissing animals and plants. This word, the word hierarchy, the word summer, 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 thunder, thief, thief, thief in the night. It's something you love. It's here only for you. Good night.
I have Bob Holman live in Morocco. I'm going to try to bring him on, he does this poem. I didn't check it against what's in the book. I hope that's what it is. But if not, it's still pretty cool what he did. So let me share my screen.
Leading Marrakesh in the morning. Everybody knows that no one's up yet. The cats aren't even up yet. The quiet isn't even up yet. The air is so fresh, you slap it and it laughs. That's how fresh it is. It holds down itself. It pulls the door open on itself. The whacking in the morning, the world and the wheels and the fresh breeze and the good morning. Good morning, morning. There's a guy at the steak night. There's a guy at the skip light store. There's a guy at the shoe store. There's a guy with the boats. There's a guy taking up all the metal. There's a guy who's looking for a tailor so he can get a suit that doesn't fit him. And there's the snake charmer. Oh, they're charming, aren't they? Snakes, that is. Oh, yeah, and there's the guy at the change place, the guy who's doing stand-up poetry with a banjo and a drum back up, and everybody's playing it. That's no one they're gonna put together. Never gonna play this, are you gonna be? Never gonna have it, never gonna have it. The guy breathes, the guy broke, and the guy breathes, and the guy broke, and the guy broke, and the guy broke, and the guy broke, and the guy broke. What to do in the Sahara? What to do in the Sahara? Nothing. 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 You're lost in the Sahara. Which way do you go? Either way. Either way. Either way. Either way. Either way. Either way. On the road. But which one? Where to go in the desert? Straight ahead. Straight ahead. Straight ahead. Where to go in the desert? Straight ahead. That's the way to go in the desert. That's the way to ahead. That's the way to go in the desert. Straight away. Straight ahead, I'm sorry. I'll go straight away. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank everyone for sticking in there, hanging in there. And George, thank you for putting this book together. It's an incredible collection. And for those in, and there's, I mean, everybody's in this book. Robert Bly's, I was just thumbing through it. And Robert Bly's in here, and Jerome Sala from Chicago, and who I think is in New York now. Ron Padgett's in here, Gregory Pardlow, Robert Haynes in here, Charles North. I mean, it goes on. Paul Mariani. It's a great book, and I'm honored to be a part of this. There it is. And you can either get it online, but you can also get it online through an independent bookstore, preferably like the Book Beat in Oak Park. So thank you, everybody, for being here and hanging out. And we'll maybe do something else again with some of the folks who didn't make it, or we weren't able to let them in for whatever reason. And I'll try to figure out how to stop that nonsense of host is in another meeting when the host is sitting right here in front of the third man sign. So, you know. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, George. Thanks, John Sinclair. Thanks to Edward Field.
Good job. Thank you all for coming.
And
Wonderful
Francine Witt, Jeffery Cyphers Wright for jumping in, and all the folks who are out there watching. And we'll get this up on Facebook. All right. It's on YouTube
Get it
now.
up.
I don't know.
Get
Yeah.
it up.
See everybody.
Facebook. Love you guys.
Everybody,
Well,
thank you.
Thank you.